She didn't walk into his life. She was pushed by poverty, by fists that were supposed to protect her, by a system that saw three desperate young people stealing and decided the best punishment was to throw them into something far worse than a jail cell. Kimi Osai, 22 years old, with calloused hands and eyes that stopped trusting people sometime around her 14th birthday, never imagined she would one day sit behind a glass desk on the 43rd floor of a Seoul skyscraper, signing documents that made grown men sweat through their suits. And Kim Young, the most feared man in the Korean underworld, CEO of YK Holdings and a man currently losing a war against his own body, never imagined he would spend the last chapter of his life handing his empire to a girl who once stole to survive. But power doesn't care about your plans. It only cares about who's still standing when the smoke clears. This is the story of a dying king, a girl with nothing left to lose, and a family that is about to discover that the most dangerous person in any room is the one they underestimated. If you have ever been written off, overlooked, or counted out, stay with me, because Kimi Osai is about to show them all what a mistake that was. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You cannot afford to miss a single chapter of this story. The apartment smelled like old grease and broken promises. Kimi stood at the cracked window of the two-room flat she shared with Dara and Felix, watching the neon lights of the market district flicker in the rain below. Seoul did not care that she was hungry. Seoul did not care about anything except money, and she had none. 3 months. That was how long it had been since she had crossed the ocean on a fake work visa, chasing a cleaning job that evaporated the same day she arrived. Dara had followed her, because Dara followed Kimi everywhere, had done so since they were both running from different versions of the same nightmare. Felix had come because Felix went wherever there was something to gain. We go in, we take what we need, we walk out slow, Felix said behind her, laying out the plan like it was something elegant. He was good at making foolish things sound reasonable. Kimi turned from the window. And when it goes wrong? Felix smiled. When has anything gone wrong for us? Everything had gone wrong, as it turned out. The convenience store had cameras they missed. The owner had a silent alarm they didn't know about. The police arrived in under 4 minutes, faster than anything moved in this city, except bad luck. They sat in a holding room for 6 hours. Kimi counted the concrete blocks in the wall. She was good at counting things. It was how she had survived her parents' house. Count the steps to the door. Count the seconds between his footsteps and the door handle. Count how much money you need to take your sister and run. Jay, 16 years old, still in that house. Every day Kimi was not there was a day Jay was unprotected. The thought sat in her chest like a coal ember, always burning, never burning out. The officer who eventually entered the room was not in uniform. He wore a gray suit and carried a folder. He sat down and looked at the three of them the way a butcher looks at meat, not unkindly, simply evaluating. You have 2 choices, he said quietly. Prosecution, which, given your visa status, ends in deportation and a permanent record, or you can work off your debt. There is an establishment that needs staff, discreet staff. The owner has an arrangement with this precinct. He slid a card across the table. It read, Club Noir. Kimi stared at the card. She already knew what kind of club didn't advertise. She already knew what discreet staff meant. But she thought about Jay. She picked up the card. She told herself it was temporary. She had been telling herself that her whole life. Club Noir occupied the lower 3 floors of a building that did not appear on any business registry. The entrance was a black door at the bottom of a stairwell, marked only by a small camera and a buzzer. Inside, the lights were always low, gold and red, always red, and the music was always loud enough to drown out conversations that had no business being overheard. Min-Joon Kim ran it with the lazy confidence of a man who believed consequences were for other people. He was 41, 10 years younger than his brother, and he had spent his entire adult life in Kim Young's shadow, resenting every inch of it. The club was his, truly his, in a way nothing in the family company had ever been, and the money it generated was the kind that didn't require board meetings or shareholder approval. Kimmy learned the layout in 2 days. She was assigned to the bar, mixing drinks, keeping glasses full, keeping her eyes down. Dara worked the floor beside her. Felix disappeared into some backroom arrangement within the first week, and neither of them asked what it was. The women who worked the private lounges did so under a kind of silence Kimmy recognized. It was the silence of people who had done their calculating and concluded that survival required certain trades. She did not judge them. She was 3 months from being in the same position. Min-Joon noticed her on day 4. She had that quality, the kind of presence that still commanded a room even when it was doing everything to stay invisible. He leaned on the bar one evening and looked at her the way men in this building looked at everything, like an asset to be deployed. "You're the one the precinct sent," he said. "I make drinks," Kimmy said. Not an answer. Exactly the answer she intended. Min-Joon smiled. For now. She did not react. She had learned young that the best response to a threat delivered as a smile was to offer nothing back. No fear, no defiance, nothing he could use. She turned back to the bottles and kept her hands moving. That night, after her shift, she called Jay from the bathroom of the flat. The phone rang 7 times before a breathless, frightened voice answered. Kimmy listened to her sister describe their mother's latest episode, their father's new silence, which was worse than his anger, and she pressed her fist against the wall tile and breathed. "I'm going to get you out," Kimmy said. "I just need a little more time." "You always say that," Jay whispered. "I always mean it." After the call, she sat on the bathroom floor for a long time, listening to Dara sleep on the other side of the thin wall. She was in a trap, she knew that. The question was not whether she could escape it. The question was whether she could find a door she hadn't seen yet. She did not know that the door was about to walk in wearing a charcoal suit. Some men enter a room. Kim Young occupied it. He arrived on a Thursday, which Kimmy would remember later as the kind of detail that should not matter and somehow always does. Kim Young did not come through the main entrance. He came through the side corridor that connected to the private lift, the one that bypassed Min-Joon's front of house entirely. He had 4 men with him, each of them built like furniture, and he walked at the kind of pace that was not hurrying, but still arrived everywhere first. He had not been to this establishment in over 3 years. He did not know it belonged to his brother. What he knew was that someone in his network had flagged this address as a location moving money without clearance, money that intersected, at several removes, with supply chains that touched YK Holdings. He had come to understand it. Kimmy was behind the bar when he walked past. She registered him the way she registered all men in expensive suits who came through Club Noir, quickly, neutrally, filing information for potential use. Age, mid-50s. Posture, a man who had never been told no and didn't expect to start. Eyes, sharp and slightly exhausted, the way eyes looked when the body was carrying something the mind refused to acknowledge. He sat at the bar, alone. His men took positions at the perimeter. "Water," he said. She poured it without comment. He drank it without looking at her. Then he set the glass down and said, quietly, This place is a mistake. Someone with authority over it should understand that." Kimmy looked at him. "Are you talking to me?" "You seem like someone worth talking to." He said it without inflection, not a compliment, not a line, an observation. "I pour drinks," she said. Same answer she had given Min-jun, different meanings entirely. What's your name? A pause. She had learned not to give her name in this building, but something about the way he asked, tired and direct without performance, made her answer. Kimmy. Korean? Ghanaian. He nodded, like this confirmed something. How did you end up here? She told him the abbreviated version, visa fraud, police, the card. She didn't know why. She had never told anyone that story who hadn't already lived it beside her. He listened without interrupting, which was unusual for powerful men. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then, you still have family in Ghana. Her jaw tightened. A sister? 16. Still with my parents. They're not... She stopped. Not safe, he finished. She didn't answer. He looked at her for a long moment, then reached into his breast pocket and placed a card on the bar. This number will reach my assistant. Call it in the morning. He stood. Why would I call a stranger? Kim Young looked at her with those exhausted, precise eyes. Because you're running out of options that don't cost you something worse, and I don't want anything from you. He straightened his jacket. Get your sister out. I'll arrange it. He walked away before she could respond. Kimmy looked at the card. She turned it over. No logo, no title, just a number. She told herself she wasn't going to call. She called at 7 in the morning. If this story is pulling you in, subscribe right now. You don't want to be the person who finds this channel on Chapter 7 and has to scramble to catch up. Hit subscribe. I'll wait. 3 days later, Jay landed at Incheon International Airport with one suitcase and Kimmy's name on a piece of paper in her pocket. Kimmy met Jay at arrivals with a borrowed umbrella and tears she refused to let fall. Jay looked thinner than her last video call and older in ways that had nothing to do with age. They held each other in the crowded terminal while announcements echoed overhead, and Kimmy said nothing, because there was nothing adequate to say. The apartment Kim Young's assistant had arranged was 3 rooms in a clean building near the river. It was more space than Kimmy and Jay had ever shared in their lives. Jay walked through it, touching the walls, and Kimmy stood in the doorway watching her, trying to convert the complicated feeling in her chest into something manageable. She did not see Kim Young again for 6 days. Then his assistant called, not to thank her for anything, but to ask if she was available the following morning. Available for what? She asked. For a meeting, the assistant said. Nothing more. The YK Holdings Tower was everything Club Noir was not. Glass and height, and the kind of quiet that money purchases. The kind where even the air felt curated. The receptionist regarded Kimmy with polite, calibrated neutrality. She was escorted to the 43rd floor. Kim Young was at his desk when she entered, and he looked worse than the night she had met him. The skin under his eyes had deepened. His hands, which he pressed flat to the desk as he stood, showed a tremor he quickly controlled. Sit, he said. She sat. He remained standing, which she read correctly as a man using posture to compensate for something. I received a diagnosis last week, he said. Stomach cancer. Stage 2, progressing. The prognosis is aggressive. He said it the way other men reported quarterly earnings. Flat, factual, without requesting a response. Kimmy said nothing. She waited. I have children, he continued, and an ex-wife, and a brother, and a father who no longer makes his own decisions. Between them, they have spent 20 years circling this company like it is a carcass they are entitled to. His jaw tightened. I built this company. I will not allow it to be divided among people who would burn it for the payout. What does this have to do with me? Kimmy asked. He looked at her directly. I need someone outside the family. Someone with no existing allegiance, no history in this world, and no patience for the games these people play. A pause. I watched you for 6 nights in that club. You are precise, observant, and you do not perform emotions you don't feel. those are rare qualities. Kimmy absorbed this. You're offering me a position. I'm offering you a proposition. He opened a folder on the desk. Marriage, on paper, a contract. You receive controlling shares in YK Holdings and the title of Chief Operating Officer. I receive the satisfaction of watching my family's faces when they find out. The ghost of something moved across his expression. In exchange, you run this company with the shares. You do not let them take it. The room was very quiet. You don't know me, Kimmy said. I know you called your sister before you called a lawyer, he said. That's enough. She looked at the folder. She looked at him. She thought about Jay in the apartment by the river. She thought about Min-jun's smile and the card from the policeman and every door she had been pushed through that led somewhere worse. Then she thought about the 43rd floor. Show me the contract, she said. She signed on Wednesday. By Thursday morning, YK Holdings had a new COO. By Thursday afternoon, the family had found out.
The call that shattered Hana Kim's morning came at 8:47 a.m., 40 minutes after the legal filing hit the company registry. She was at her vanity, preparing for a board advisory meeting she had been angling toward for months, when her lawyer said the words she had never, not once, prepared to hear. Kim Young has transferred his controlling shares to his new wife. The silence that followed lasted 11 seconds. Hana counted them. She was, like her ex-husband, a woman who counted things. What a wife, she said. Not a question, a refusal. Ri-sol, Kim Young's daughter, arrived at the tower at 9:15, which was impressive given that she lived 40 minutes away in Gangnam and had never been known to be early for anything. She was 29, had her father's cheekbones and her mother's talent for fury, and she stormed past 3 levels of security using sheer velocity. She was stopped at the 43rd floor, not by security. Kimmy, who had been briefed on exactly this possibility, standing at the lift exit in a dark blazer that Kim Young's assistant had laid out that morning. Ms. Kim, Kimmy said, perfectly level. Your father is not available. Ri-sol looked at her for a long, incredulous moment. Who are you? Kimmy Kim. The name was strange in her mouth. She had practiced saying it in the bathroom mirror that morning, and the strangeness had not diminished. Chief Operating Officer. That is not a position this company has, Ri-sol said. It is now. They looked at each other. Then Ri-sol pulled out her phone. Kimmy did not move. Tae-ho, the son, arrived an hour later, calmer than his sister, which made him more dangerous. He was 32, an investment consultant who had made a career out of positioning himself near wealth he had not generated. He sat down in the lobby, ordered coffee from a staff member as though he owned the building, and waited, which was its own kind of pressure. Kimmy watched him on the security monitor from inside Kim Young's office, where Kim Young sat in his chair looking out at Seoul with the careful stillness of a man rationing his energy. Your daughter is calling every legal contact she has. Your son is in the lobby. Your ex-wife hasn't appeared yet, which means she's planning something. Kim Young didn't turn around. Min-jun? Nothing yet, but he'll know by now. A pause. Good, he said, and there was something in the word, not satisfaction exactly, something older and colder, the sound of a man who has been waiting a very long time to see something burn. Kimmy looked at the back of his head. In her entire life, she had never been inside a war this large, but she had been inside smaller ones, and she had learned something crucial. The person who controls information controls the battlefield. She turned back to the monitor. She began to make a list. This story is only getting started, and trust me, you have not seen anything yet. Subscribe and hit the bell so you're notified the moment the next chapter drops. Things are about to get very complicated. By the end of that week, 3 separate legal challenges had been filed. None of them had landed. Kimmy had not slept more than 4 hours in 6 days, and Min-jun had still not made his move.
Min Jun made his move on a Saturday, which Kimmy had not expected. She had been watching for weekday corporate moves, lawyers and filings and boardroom positioning. What came instead arrived in the form of a journalist. The article was published at 6 a.m. on a domestic business news site. CEO of YK Holdings marries unknown foreign national. Company shares in question. The piece was thin on facts and heavy on implication, exactly the way the useful kind of hit pieces always were. It's named Kimmy. It listed her nationality. It described her as a woman with no corporate background and no verifiable professional history in South Korea. It did not mention Club Noir, but Min Jun knew about the police arrangement, which meant it was leverage he was saving. Kimmy read the article at 6:04 a.m. at the kitchen table while Jay was still asleep. She read it 3 times. Then she set her phone face down and thought. She called Dara. I need you to find out who fed that journalist the story. Min Jun moved through someone. Find someone. Dara, who had quietly transitioned from Club Noir to a clerical position in Kimmy's new world, a promotion no one had officially authorized but no one had challenged yet, said, On it. But Kimmy, a pause. They're going to come at you from every direction now. I know. You're sure about this. A longer pause. Kimmy looked at her sister's closed bedroom door. I'm sure. By Monday morning, she had called an emergency executive committee meeting, her first. She had studied the company structure over the weekend with the focused intensity she had once applied to learning which floorboards creaked in her parents' house, which doors locked quietly, which routines preceded danger. She knew the org chart. She knew the alliances. She knew who in that room had been loyal to Kim Young and who had been politely waiting for his decline. She walked into the boardroom in the blazer, and a silence fell. There were 11 people in the room. She had been there before only as a presence at Kim Young's shoulder. Now she sat at the head of the table. Thank you for coming, she said. There will be an attempt to destabilize the leadership of this company over the next several weeks, using a combination of media pressure, legal challenge, and internal dissent. I want every person in this room to understand something clearly. She looked around the table, slow, deliberate, meeting every set of eyes. I am not here by accident. I am not temporary, and I am not alone. The silence held. Then the CFO, a compact gray-haired woman named Miss O, who had built the company's financial architecture over 15 years, set her pen down and said, What do you need from us? Kimmy allowed herself exactly half a second of relief. Then she opened her folder. A full audit of Club Noir's financial connections to this company, starting today. The room shifted. 2 people exchanged a glance. Min Jun had allies here. She had just identified them. The audit request hit Min Jun's desk by noon. By 2 p.m., he had called an emergency meeting with Hana. The war had officially begun. Kim Young collapsed on a Tuesday. Kimmy was in a meeting when her phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Baek-won. He is being admitted. Come when you can. She finished the meeting. She did not let her face change. She understood already that the moment she showed vulnerability in that building, the walls would begin to close. She wrapped up in 7 minutes, delegated 3 items to Miss O, and left with enough composure to make 2 board members wonder if the message had been good news. The hospital was private, the kind that had artwork in the corridors and nurses who did not raise their voices. Kim Young was in a room on the 5th floor, attached to monitors, looking smaller than she had ever seen him look. Illness had a way of editing people, removing the layers of authority and threat until only the body remained. She sat in the chair beside his bed, and they were both quiet for a while. Min Jun filed a motion this morning, she said eventually, challenging the share transfer on grounds of mental incapacity at time of signing. Kim Young's mouth pressed into a line. He would. Dr. Baek already submitted documentation confirming your cognitive status at the time of signing. The motion will fail, eventually. How long does it take? Long enough to be uncomfortable. She looked at him. There's something else. The journalist who ran that story, Dara, traced the tip. It didn't come from Min-jun directly. It came from Tae-ho. Something moved behind Kim Young's eyes. His own son. He said nothing. They're coordinating, Kimmy continued. Hana, Min-jun, both children, probably under one legal strategy. 4 fronts at once. She had been expecting this, but speaking it aloud still had weight. Kim Young turned his head toward the window. The city spread out below in its density and motion. "Are you afraid?" he asked, not unkindly. Kimmy thought about this honestly. "Yes," she said, "but I was afraid in my parents' house every day until I left. I was afraid of Club Noir. I was afraid when I signed the contract." She paused. "Fear is just information. It tells you what matters." He looked at her. The expression on his face was difficult to classify. Not gratitude, not admiration, something quieter than both. "You're going to be fine," he said. The words came out like something he had not planned to say. "I know," she said. Jay came that evening because Jay had decided that the man who got her out of her parents' house deserved a visit, regardless of the complexity of everything else. She sat at the foot of his bed and told him about school. She had enrolled in a language program, and Kim Young listened with the distant attention of someone who had forgotten what it felt like to hear a young person talk about the future. When Jay left, Kim Young was asleep. Kimmy sat in the chair a little longer, then she went back to the office. The motion failed in 12 days as predicted. What no one predicted was what Min-jun did next. The envelope arrived at the YK Holdings reception desk addressed to Kimmy, with no return name. Inside was a photograph. It was taken inside Club Noir, from an angle that suggested a camera she had never identified. It showed Kimmy behind the bar on a night she remembered precisely, the night after Felix had disappeared into the back rooms and Dara had asked her what they were going to do. Beneath the photograph was a single printed line. The board would find this interesting. So would immigration. Kimmy set the envelope on her desk and sat back in her chair. Min-jun had been holding this. He had known from the beginning. Of course he had. He had known who the police arrangement came through, which meant he had known the moment she walked into that bar exactly what she was. He had let her rise, let her sign contracts and sit at board tables and announce audits, and now he was pulling the thread. She called Dara first. "He has a photograph. From inside the club. How many cameras were there that neither of us identified?" "At least 2 in blind spots," Dara said. A pause. "Are you going to tell Kim Young? He's in hospital. He doesn't need this." "Kimmy." "I'll handle it." She sat with the photograph for another hour. She thought about what Min-jun was actually trying to accomplish. Not just damage, not just leverage. He wanted her out. But more than that, he wanted to be the one to take her out, publicly. He wanted the board to see it, the media to see it, his brother to see it and understand that his little experiment had been dismantled by family. Which meant he hadn't sent it to the board yet. He was giving her a chance to step back voluntarily so he could take the company without the mess of a public exposure. She almost laughed. She called Miss O instead. "I need to call an emergency shareholder meeting, full board attendance, within 48 hours. A pause. And I need you to pull every financial record connected to Club Noir's operating accounts for the last 3 years. Miss O was quiet for a moment. "You're going to go at him directly?" "He already went at me," Kimmy said. "I'm just returning the conversation." That night, she sat with Jay at the kitchen table while Jay did homework, and she ate noodles from a container and read company statutes. And it felt absurd and also exactly right, this small domestic scene embedded inside the largest thing she had ever done. "You look tired," Jay said, without looking up from her notebook. "I'm fine." Jay looked up. "You always say that." "I always mean it," Kimmy said. But this time she reached across the table and squeezed Jay's hand, just for a second. The meeting was set for Thursday. Min-jun had 36 hours. She suspected he would use them. He did. What he did not count on was what Kimmy had found buried in Club Noir's accounts, and who else's name was on them. The shareholder meeting was at 9 in the morning on a Thursday in the main boardroom, floor 43, with Seoul laid out like a promise through the floor-to-ceiling glass. Every seat was filled. The air was the specific variety of tense that happens when powerful people know a detonation is coming, but not the direction. Kimmy arrived 4 minutes early. She had slept 5 hours. She had reviewed her notes twice on the ride over. She was wearing the charcoal blazer she had worn on her first day. It had become, without ceremony, the thing she wore when she needed to remind herself who she had decided to be. Min-jun arrived with a lawyer. He sat down without looking at her, which told her he was nervous. Hana was not in the room. Neither were the children. Their absence was a message. They had decided Min-jun was the sacrifice. If he moved successfully, they would claim credit. If he failed, they would never have been there. Kimmy noted all of this. She opened the meeting. "Thank you all for attending on short notice," she said. "There has been an attempt over the past several weeks to destabilize the leadership and ownership structure of YK Holdings. Today, I am going to address that attempt directly, on record, in front of the full board." She nodded to Ms. O, who passed folders to each seat. Club Noir, an illegal nightclub operating at a registered address, has been laundering money through a subsidiary, holding account registered to a shell entity. That entity resolves, on audit, to a controlling interest held by Min-jun Kim. She clicked to her next slide. The conduct described triggers the morality clause in the shareholder agreement, page 11, which means Min-jun Kim's shares are subject to compulsory review. She looked at him directly for the first time in the meeting. "I have already filed the notification with the corporate registry." Min-jun looked up. His face had gone very quiet, the kind of quiet that was not peace. "You have something you'd like to say to this board?" Kimmy asked. Her voice was entirely even. He said nothing. The CFO called for the vote to proceed with the shareholder review. It passed 8-2. The two who voted against looked at each other and then looked away. Kimmy closed her folder. She looked around the room one last time, at the faces of people recalibrating, reclassifying, deciding who she was in their calculation of the world. She stood. "The meeting was adjourned. My door is open to any board member who would like to discuss the path forward." She walked out into the corridor. Through the glass, she could see Min-jun still sitting, not moving, the folder open in front of him. His lawyer was on the phone. Dara was waiting at the lift. "How'd it go?" I exhaled. "We still have a company." Dara grinned. Then her phone buzzed. She looked at it. Her grin disappeared. "What?" Kimmy asked. Dara turned the phone around. It was a message from Dr. Baek-won. "Kim Young has been transferred to a specialist facility. The conditions have changed. Come when possible." Kimmy read it twice. The city glittered below them, indifferent and enormous. She pressed the lift button. She did not know what she would find when she got there. She only knew that whatever came next, she was no longer the girl who had nothing. So, here is where we stand. Kimmy Osei, 22 years old, a girl who once slept on a cracked floor in a city that did not know her name, now controls one of South Korea's most contested corporate empires. She has survived a smear campaign, a legal assault from 4 directions, and a blackmail attempt from a man who underestimated what happens when you corner someone who has already survived worse than you can imagine. Min-jun is facing a shareholder review that will, in all probability, strip him of the inheritance he has spent his life expecting. Hana and the children are recalculating. Felix is still missing. Dara is still here. loyal in the way that some people simply are, without condition. Jay is in a language class on a Tuesday morning and thinks Seoul might be the most beautiful city she has ever seen. And Kim Young, the man at the center of all of this, the man who set it in motion with a business card and a glass of water, is in a specialist facility somewhere in this city, connected to machines, in a condition that Dr. Beck 1 described only as changed. What does change mean? Is he fighting? Is he gone? Is there something the doctors found that rewrites the timeline entirely? And if Kim Young walks back out of that facility into the world he built, what exactly is the nature of what exists between him and Kimmy? A contract, they said. Just a contract. But contracts do not sit beside someone's hospital bed past midnight. They do not listen without interrupting. They do not say, "You're going to be fine," in a voice that sounds like it costs something. Part 2 is coming, and I promise you, the complications have only just begun. If this story reaches you, subscribe, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and drop a comment below. Tell me, do you think this was ever just a contract? The answer matters more than you know. See you in part 2.